Fun in the sun. Is Sheehan the one? The most forgettable football match of all time? A trip to Babylon as David Gray is linked? Not that one. We'll talk expectations, Ronald, Peart-Harris, recruitment, fresh ideas, a cancelled fans forum. Part 2. How nightnurse is getting me through this episode and the conversation you've all been waiting for. Mullets. All that and more on today's Only Swans Podcast. So, Carwyn, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Happy to be here again. How are you?
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. And we're so grateful. I think we should start by saying so grateful for all the brilliant feedback we've had on episode 1 as well. It seems like
absolutely. I mean, we didn't really expect that much support from the first episode, 100% on all platforms, not even just YouTube and Spotify, clips, everything we posted did absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah,
so
literally all the support, the number of views, everything has just completely blown us away with that one, really. So perhaps we should begin by talking about the cancelled fans forum, where we should have been. I mean, this is the second time now we're recording one of these where we should have been at a fans forum earlier in the week. I mean, I'm going to hope every episode's not like that, but...
Well, you got to pray, haven't you? But I mean, it was a bit strange, to be honest. I just don't understand why they would arrange a fans forum for the 3rd of March, knowing that there was a game in that period anyway, and then using the excuse of match preparation. I think that's just poor preparation on their behalf. I
mean, what I've said, I've double-checked it, triple-checked it, is the fans forum was originally cancelled on the 17th of February.
Yeah.
That game for Preston was rearranged on the 14th of February. So I think one of two things has gone on here. Either they've forgotten, which is possible. I think they could well have just completely forgotten that we had a game. Or this was always the plan all along to go, actually, hang on, you know what, we've got to focus on preparation, so we'll chuck that date out there and then we can wriggle our way out of it. I mean, I think it's one of those two things, and I don't think either reflects particularly well on the club, really.
No. I mean, I'd understand the match preparations, point if they didn't already know about it. As you said, that's the biggest issue here, is that they actually already knew. So what is the reasoning for cancelling that?
There's no excuse for that, really. These matches can't come as a surprise. We knew they were happening. I mean, there was all of the 2 weeks before, the Preston game, or 10 days, I should say, before that Preston game where we could have done it. I don't know whether Coleman threw that date out there originally because he thought we'd have a manager in post by then. If he thought that, then fair enough. But I don't think any of the fans ever thought we'd have a manager in by then.
Well, I mean, to be honest, whatever match preparations they were doing clearly wasn't enough. I'm going to be completely honest. So,
yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think, to be honest, I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity on their part as well. Because I think if they had done the fans forum on Monday night, I think they could have probably got away with it a little bit got away with some of the tougher questions compared to had we obviously done it when Luke was still here, or when, as I think now, next time, I think no matter what happens, is going to be tougher, because the first question of the next fans forum is obvious. Why the hell did you cancel the last one?
Yeah.
And that's there's not really going to be a fair answer to that. Whereas I think if they'd done it, originally as was planned on Monday night, then they'd have had Richard Montague there, so it'd have been the first opportunity for fans to speak to a new sporting director. They could have gone, fully down the route of, well, the past is the past, look into the future. Of course, they'll still probably try and do that, I think. But I think now we've missed that opportunity. And of course, we were riding high after a really excellent
We won the
result
game 3-0, and a lot of fans would have been buzzing about that, regardless of what they think of the manager or whatever. It wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah, and I think we should probably talk about that Blackburn game. It was an excellent performance, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, we looked very good. I mean, I caught the majority of it. We looked fantastic, to be fair. We looked good. We played good football on the floor. We obviously scored 3 goals against, as we described, a very good side, though. If we go back to your point from 2 weeks ago, it was very correct. You said when it rains, it pours for Blackburn, and it actually did.
Yeah, well, I didn't think that would prove out to be sort of so accurate as it was, but the stats said that when they concede one, they tend to concede a few, and that was how it went, really. I mean, to be honest, dare I say, I think we were a little bit wasteful in that game. I think there was opportunities we should have scored. I think Verpotnik should have definitely had 2. I think Verpotnik was fantastic, to be honest. I think it was by a country mile.
I think we could have won that game both 6-0. Honestly, we looked so good.
I think it was by a country mile his best game in the Swansea shirt. I think Peart-Harris was excellent as well. For them, just, as I say, their best performances in a Swan shirt. I think Franco is fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean,
as always.
As always, but when you say that, I think he'd been a little bit weak since Grimes left, to be honest. And
I think it's just a case of for Franco playing that new role, because whether you think he is playing a new role or not, he plays a lot higher up now. Like, I remember in the Bristol City game when, Grimes had only just left, Luke Williams was still in post. He was, in the 85th minute, he was our one forward. He was running up like he was playing in the attack.
Yeah, so, and I think, but what really stood out, I mean, we probably lots of us saw the stats with 9 tackles in that game. I mean, that's just mad, isn't it? Especially in a game where, I mean, we did have slightly less of the ball than we were looking to keep under Luke Williams. So when you have less of the ball, you're going to be looking to win it back more. So perhaps you would expect, if we do have Sheehan for a little bit of time, Franco's tackle numbers to look a little bit better. I mean, as I say, it's obvious. If you don't have the ball, then you have to tackle somebody to win it back. And if you do have the ball, then you're not going to be tackling people.
Well, it was the most tackles since Jack Hawke in a game, wasn't it? Which,
yeah, exactly.
Jack Hawke, you're looking back 9 years ago now.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you're
ridiculous
looking back,
stat.
And you're looking back at a time when we probably weren't playing. We would have had less of the ball when Jack Hawke was here than we have perhaps under people like Russell Martin, whatever. We're not going to have players making that level of tackles when we have that much of the ball. But I think Franco, showed himself to really step up in that game. Really did sort of put to bed a bit of a lingering question, because there was a bit of a question as well, I'd say, going into that one. Could him and O'Brien really play together? Were they kind of trying to operate in the same spaces, do the same thing? I think you can put that one to bed now as well.
Definitely. And I mean, they both looked good again yesterday, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about that Preston game, but is there anything else you thought really stood out from the Blackburn game? Or?
Not too much. I was actually just really pleased after the game. We did look really good. I didn't know what to expect from the game, and I mean, it probably echoed on the podcast that I didn't really know what to expect from the game, but it was really good football. We played really nice stuff, and ultimately it was quite a nice sort of respite from what we'd been experiencing for the last few months.
I mean, I think a game like that, I thought we were probably quite likely to win it if we played sort of bottom half opposition, because I thought we would possibly lose to Blackburn. We have, as we said on the last podcast, a terrible record against sides in the top 6, whereas obviously they were in the top 6 before that. I'm not sure they are now, but I felt that we really went toe to toe with them. I mean, they offered very, very little. Perhaps they'd been riding a wave in the wake of Eustace's departure, and it was always going to come to an end. And our players had the best possible opportunity to show a sort of step up in mentality, really. I said one final thing I'd want to mention is I felt the moment at the end where Sheehan took all of the coaching staff over to, and just every one of the staff, the dugout was empty, over to the East Stand at the end of the game. I think that was quite important, because regardless of what you think of Sheehan, regardless if it is the case behind the scenes, I think you have to show unity, even if there isn't unity behind the scenes. In those sorts of opportunities, you have to show unity. Yeah,
well, Sheehan, in situations like this where, the going gets tough, he is a good bloke to pick people back up. He speaks very well, like his press conferences are actually very enjoyable.
Yeah, there's something sort of, when things aren't going well, I mean, I always remember the one after Duff where we knew nothing about Sheehan. There's something sort of quite cathartic about the way he speaks, because he is quite mellow and measured, and he's never going to get really high, but I don't think he's ever going to get really low either. So even in the wake of a really dark mood around the club, as we had after the end of the Luke Williams days and the end of the Duff days, I think he does, in his own way, which isn't by being all enthusiastic and charismatic, but in his own way, he does kind of pick the mood up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can see how he gets results as an interim, really. Obviously, his second game in charge was last night as we're recording this. It was, well, as I said in the intro, probably one of the most forgettable football matches of all time. I mean, firstly, did anybody who's watching this go? I'm desperate to know, because...
Well, I doubt it. I mean, 55 people or something.
Yeah, the talk, obviously we haven't seen this sort of verified anywhere, and I hope no Cardiff fans are watching this to hear this number, but apparently only 55 people travelled last night.
Which is respectable. I do think, game got rearranged, there's a lot going on.
I mean, I did see on Twitter there was a few boys who were off up to Blackpool for the original date.
So they went
fixture
on the Friday,
yeah, and just decided to go anyway, and I thought that was brilliant.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, they went and watched Fleetwood against Notts County, and I thought that's good going. Obviously, if this game was on a Saturday, we would have taken a lot more up there, but with it being rearranged, it's always going to be difficult. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there were club coaches running either.
No.
Which is worrying for midweeks going forward, to be honest, because for obvious reasons, I've been on the coach many times to midweek games. People are more reluctant to drive to a midweek fixture because you get back at God knows what hour. And I think it is something if it seems like, because apparently the Watford coach, I think, has been dropped due to lack of demand.
Which I find mental.
I'm surprised about that because, we usually take a few up to Watford.
To be fair, we get them on a weekday every year.
Yeah,
so I
we
think
do
people are probably quite sick of that.
Yeah, possibly. I've done Watford twice and it's both times been on the bus because it's midweek. But I think that's something the club should really reconsider if that is going to be the case going forward, because it really limits the amount of people we can take to watch midweek games, when I think there is a level of demand to go and see these fixtures. I mean, throughout, uni was my main time of going to watch midweek
For sure.
games.
I mean, there's always going to be people who want to go watch. So
we've got flexi time and work or whatever, so it is something important. And is a sort of...
But I think if we go back to the game, first off, Lawrence
I went on
Figueroa.
a tangent there.
Yeah,
sorry.
Lawrence Figueroa was absolutely phenomenal. What did he make? 5 saves.
5 saves, yeah.
Over 1 goal prevented, 3 big chances they had, and he saved them all. He was absolutely class.
And I think Figueroa is someone we have to give a huge shout out to. He has to be player of the season for me. I think he's been excellent. There's a bit of a sort of debate emerging as to whether he is as good as some people suggest. I think that's nonsense, to be honest, because I think there's been times this season where he's basically stood on his head.
I think he's backed it up enough.
Yeah.
We're 10 points clear right now. I'd argue he's won us 10 points.
Yeah, and
without a doubt.
I think some of the games where he's been good, he's been phenomenal and just stood on his head.
He's looked absolutely different level.
Yeah, you look at last night, you look at the Bristol City game, which we won. I mean, huge credit has to go to him for some of these victories. And a fantastic bit of recruitment, to be honest, because, for all the faults in our recruitment, of which I think we can all agree that there is many, it's a different signing. I think, somebody who's 30, who's never played at championship level before, obviously he went to the Premier League but didn't actually play a game, it is a bit of a risk.
Yeah, it is a big step up for him at the end of the day.
Of course it is a big step up, but he's really shown, the value of being a bit creative in what we do when looking domestically as well. And I think he's really stepped up and shown himself to be an excellent championship keeper. Someone who I think will be here for a few years to come as well, which is important.
Oh, 100%. I don't see him going anywhere, especially because of his age. That's one positive, is that he is sort of, he's entered his peak by now, so teams aren't going to be really sniffing about for him.
And keepers do tend to peak later, don't they? And can play on later as well. I mean, there's every chance he could be our number one for the next 5 years, realistically.
Yeah, could be until he's about 38, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What did you make of the defensive performance from the back four?
Well, as I mentioned there, I actually thought Josh Key and Timon were excellent. They did play very well in the game, a lot better than they have in, the past few months. But, conceding 3 big chances in a game is pretty poor. There's no doubt. And there were some calamitous moments in that game, moments where I thought Harry Darling gave the ball away in the last minute. He did manage to catch up. I think it was Reece. But I thought, last minute, you don't want to be giving the ball away there. Cabango, a few times, is a bit dodgy, but they kept the clean sheet. And again, that's down to Figueroa. So
I think one thing we've got to talk about in regards to the Preston game, which wasn't quite so clear in the Blackburn game, but was the case a little bit as well, is quite how much we went long. And Sheehan referenced this in his press conference. I mean, whatever you think of the Swansea way, whatever you think of possession football, always looking to play that from the back, 68 long balls in that game last night.
Unbelievable.
Attempted long balls, I should say.
When I looked about the 60th minute of the game and I went, oh my God, we've attempted 50 long balls. And then I went and had a look for this, obviously, and 68 final start. That is not a Swansea City team.
No.
I can't remember a time where I've seen us attempt to go long 68 times. It was crazy. We were going along from the middle of the park when we had wingers running,
I feel like someone will pull up a fixture where we have gone.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure we did under Duff, but
yeah, of course, But I think, ultimately there were sort of mitigating factors to what happened last night when the pitch was awful.
Oh, it was dreadful.
Absolute cabbage patch of a pitch. It is a tough place to go against a side, They beat Burnley 3-0 on Saturday. Of course.
Well, ultimately, it's a good point. Whether we like it or not, it's a good point on the road against the tough team on a dreadful pitch, a pitch that I'd argue is probably worse than the Swan comp somehow. So, it is a good point. Midweek, everything was sort of against us in that game just for a terrible 1-0 loss.
It does feel like we never really win midweek, does it? So it's important to keep the points ticking over at the very least. And that point about keeping the points ticking over, I think, is important because Sheehan hasn't lost a game so far, and that needs to continue from the perspective of we need to try and go into next season with at least a bit of momentum.
Well, it has put us 10 points clear from the relegation zone, so it's pretty much secured us our safety all but. So you can't fault that.
The worry in that game is we did create very little last night, didn't we?
Yeah, we had that, one half chance where Callum probably could have shot, but he squared it, and then free kick, which was, millimetres away in all fairness. But besides that, we did look pretty lacklustre going forward.
Yeah, one of the few talking points I'd say in a very drab game was the Miles Peart-Harris injury.
Yeah.
Looked pretty serious initially. What have you made of him? I mean, I'm not talking about this as if he's, definitely played his last game. I will let you all into a little secret here. Did see him in Tesco earlier today, and he was walking fine, but obviously
that could mean
anything, couldn't it? But I, did think, is he going to be limping? He wasn't. So fingers crossed, it's nothing serious, because I think we have to look at his loan overall as a success. I think he's been...
Definitely. I mean, he scored some important goals. Look at the Watford game. He scored 1-0. The Blackburn game, he scored a great goal in that. Like, in these last two games, he looked a lot more cutting edge before the injury. He looked like he wanted to take his man on a bit more and stuff.
And I think what he deserves a lot of credit for is showing up and really putting in good performances out of position as well.
Yeah.
Because he's not a winger. I mean, he's a really big bloke. Question marks over how well he uses his body, stuff like that. But I think stuff like that will come with experience. Obviously, he's on loan, so we're not going to see the value of this.
Yeah.
But I think you have to look at his loan spell as a real success, and ultimately a success for what we expect him to be. And a lot of the things which he has sort of fans of his other clubs questioned when he came here, I don't think have really turned out to be the case. I don't think he is as lazy as a lot of Pompey fans said. Oh, best of luck, he's really lazy. I don't think that's.
I think he's putting a load of effort on the
wing,
I think to be honest.
Really,
and I'd honestly argue, performance-wise, he's probably been second, if not first, in terms of our best wingers this season.
Who would you say has been our best winger this season?
I'd say it's probably him. I mean, the only other person you could argue is Ronald, simply because of his 7 GA, but I wouldn't argue that personally. No. So, he has been our best winger. Of course, that is a very, questionable statement.
And I think the fact we're talking about him as our best winger perhaps is a bit of an indication as to how poor our winger core has been this season.
Yeah.
And I think, it's between him and Ronald. I prefer Peart-Harris. I think he offers a bit more, and he offers a goal threat as well, which goals are limited in this team. And I mean, I think, he offers a much bigger goal threat than Ronald, certainly, who's only scored one this season, and Omji Sung, who hasn't scored at all.
Absolutely cursed. I don't see him scoring a goal.
No, it feels like he'll never score because he's missed some real sitters as well.
And that one last night was so unlucky. Honestly, to go under the wall, especially in the modern game where it's sort of been cut out because of all the lying on the ground. Impressive effort, to be honest. And I do hope he scores. I think, it's always that sort of cliche that one goal he could score 10, but he does get in good positions at points. Last night he actually looked okay. I'll commend him. He did look good. In previous weeks he has been pretty frustrating to watch.
Yeah, and it's clear that he's a player who's really low on confidence. And it is a cliche, as you say, but when you are low on confidence, you do just need one to grind.
Yeah. He's a young guy in a foreign country. As much as I think his performances haven't been good enough, and I have said that, a fair few times, I think you also need to give him a bit of the benefit of the doubt because he will be here next season. And, we do want him to perform well, ultimately.
It is reminiscent of the Josh Key situation last year. Perhaps it's gone on for a bit longer than that now, but started really brightly, started really well. Got quite a nasty injury that kept him out for a couple of months and has really struggled since that. But it's understandable, as you say, but I think at this point he just needs one to go in, really. Reports earlier today, completely changing topic back to the manager now. Reports earlier today that we were linked with Hibernian head coach David Gray. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that one? Firstly, do you think it could happen? Because I don't, if I'm honest, but what do you reckon?
I don't see it happening, but just as a discussion point, I do quite like him. I mean, Hibs are doing really well this season. They're third.
Started badly, but they're
doing really well now. And they do look like a decent side. He's very young. Was he 36, something like that?
Yeah,
he's ridiculously young.
He's a Hibs legend. He scored
in the
winner
114 year he ended trophy drought. So
I think what I see with that one, I mean, firstly, we will say it's Alan Nixon who reported it. So it's very unlikely to be true. Let's be honest. I don't think he's ever got anything right about Swansea, really.
No, and he's got half of Swansea blocked as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Including both of us, or just
Yeah,
me?
me
Both
too
of
as
us,
well.
yeah. But I think it would be bizarre. I mean, he waited patiently for his chance at Hibs, David Gray. He, I referenced it in the intro, not the same guy who sang Babylon, as great of a song as that is. Sadly not that guy. He waited patiently for his chance at Hibs.
Caretaker 4 times, or 3, was it? Yeah,
I think 3 times and not given the job, and then
he had it one more time.
had it one more time.
Well, he's been there, since he retired in 2021. So, I don't see the opportunity.
But
that
he's a
will
Hibs
arise to leave.
legend. He's adored there. I can't see him leaving at the first time of asking, especially to a club where I imagine you would think probably wouldn't be the number one choice for supporters.
No.
So I can't really see that. But his Hibs team recently have been on an absolute roll, 15 unbeaten, including 11 wins. They beat Hearts this
Drew
weekend.
with Rangers 2-2 as well, didn't
beat
they?
Celtic.
Yep.
There's been plenty of renditions of Sunshine on Leith all over the internet recently, haven't there?
Yeah.
But the key fact we must always talk about, which when it comes to any Swansea manager, possession. People argue what Swansea way is, but they haven't kept possession this season, have they?
No, not really.
They're only 46% possession, only the 6th most in the league. I can't see him being. Seems like an odd call in terms of a first-time manager who's only been doing it for just over a season.
I actually don't think Hibs play terrible football, but at the same time, he doesn't suit us. I don't think at all. I don't think he's a Swansea manager.
No.
And I don't see him as a man who would want to manage Swansea, as we've pretty much said here a few times now.
It's a very strange link for an inexperienced coach, if that makes sense. I can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't. I can't see it. Is the bottom line of it. I really can't see us going down that route. But it's like us having 4 caretaker spells of Sheehan in it. But
yeah, pretty
he
much.
is a bit more adored there than that.
Yeah.
But perhaps we've got 2 more Sheehan spells left in us. Speaking of Sheehan, what have you made of his spell in caretaker charge so far?
I think he's done a good job in galvanising everyone. He's spoken very well in press conferences, as we said. And, you can't fall 4 points out of 6, can you?
Would you consider him for the top job, or?
I would not.
Yeah.
Obviously that sort of, goes against what I just said, but at the same time, I think we should be a bit more ambitious. I actually do quite like Alan Sheehan as a bloke. I liked his last spell, to be honest, but I just don't think he's a manager who suits Swansea City. Anyone whose team's attempting 68 long balls in a game does not suit Swansea City.
And I think what we both see is that he will go on to have quite a successful career in management elsewhere. I just don't think he's necessarily the right fit for us, but what he will have earned, surely, and deservedly so, after a good spell, 2 spells in charge as caretaker, is a shot at League One or potentially a top League 2 job, and he's absolutely earned that. And if he steadies the ship twice and sets us up for under a new manager, gives us a bit of a platform to build on, he has to have our well wishes. I think.
I think whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that he is a good shot of being a successful manager, because any manager who talks the way he does, and any manager who does the things he does, like, he's a very smart bloke, as we mentioned earlier, him bringing all the coaching staff onto the field, he is a very clever bloke. He knows how to galvanise a fan base, and he's done it twice now. So
but ultimately I think you have to look at his credentials for a championship job. I think if we were lower in the football pyramid, you'd possibly consider
I think
him.
he's too far off. Yeah.
But we wouldn't want Oxford set piece coach. We wouldn't want Portsmouth set piece coach. So why would we necessarily want Sheehan? And I had this conversation with somebody earlier in the week, pretty much saying that exact point.
Yeah.
I don't think his ideas align with that of a Swansea manager. He might well go on to succeed elsewhere. I think he probably will. The players clearly do like Sheehan. I think he is clearly a popular figure. But I mean, there's this story that came out earlier in the week in Football League World, wasn't it? Felt agent-led. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, we're saying that all the players wanted him to get the job, wasn't it, pretty much? And I mean, it's not the first time his agent's done something like this, because his agent also tried to link him with the Coventry job.
Yeah,
a few
exactly.
months ago.
You have to wonder whether that Coventry job he was potentially linked or not. I would be wary of the player's choice being someone internal. I don't know if you feel the same, but to me that sounds like they want someone who will give them an easy ride.
At the end of the day, not to sound, bad about this or something, but I don't think it really matters what the players truly want, because it's about what the club needs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about what the players want, because any player could jump ship at any point and leave this football club and go somewhere else.
As we've seen recently,
the
isn't it?
club's here forever. It's not their choice. It's the people, making the decisions choice, and they need to make that choice correctly. They can't base it off what the players want. They need to base it off actual facts and evidence on what will help us achieve.
And I don't think necessarily, choosing a manager based on the player's choice is right, because, I mean, we tried it with Luke Williams. Luke Williams was obviously pushed very heavily by Matt Grimes. Grimes then left before Luke Williams was done. As you say, there is a level of churn with any squad, and you can't base managerial decisions just on what the players want. And I don't think we will either. I don't think that'll place too much weight into it. As we said, I think that is just a sort of a busy agent, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
We play Borough on Saturday at home. They have, had a bit of a tough few weeks, but they're starting to come back into form now. What have you made of them so far this season, and what do you think they will offer in terms of a threat against us?
Well, I mean, they've been absolutely shocking the last few months, haven't they? As you said, they're sort of picking it back up now, but I think
back-to-back wins in their last 2 games.
I think Michael Carrick was, pretty fortunate that similar situation to Russ, really, in the sense that the fans, the quiet majority of the fan base do just love him. So he was fine to sort of just carry on with his work. But I think, there was a good chance he could have and should have been sacked the way they were playing.
Bit of a shame that they didn't sack him, because he's one who I would very much like down here.
He'd have been a great candidate.
But, we're never going to get him from Borough, obviously not. But if he was out of work, he's someone I think could well be on our list. Mm-hmm. They are a strong side, I think, with real attacking threat. I mean, Ben Doak is the one that comes to mind immediately. Been one of the best wingers in the league this season. I don't know whether he's back. He's been injured the past 2 weeks, but he is on his way back. If Ben Doak isn't available, then they have Sam Eiling-Julia and Morgan Whittaker, both of whom they could play on the right up against Josh Tyman, who, I think Tyman's excellent going forward. He is a bit weak defensively. All 3 of those players would cause real problems against Tyman. They also have probably the best attacking midfielder in the league. I mean, Finn Azaz, former teammate of Ollie Cooper at Newport's, obviously. He's the first player in the Football League to hit 10 goals and 10 assists this season.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player.
He's phenomenal.
He was great at Plymouth and very good for
as well. Yeah, but I think, I think somebody like him will, especially in terms of output, which ultimately is what wins football matches, and he causes real problems to any side he faces. They have the 3rd most goals per match in the league. They are very suspect defensively. I think defensive personnel are quite poor for Borough, but I think, attacking wise, in terms of the midfield as well, players like Hayden Hackney, I think is a very good player. But in terms of attacking options, obviously they've got Ian Atcho, who's played God knows how many games at Premier League level, even if he is. I mean, what we can get away with against a side like that is I think we will be allowed to play out the back quite easily, especially if they go with somebody like Ian Atcho and Whittaker. I mean, these are not hard-working players, are they? And Bergsorg as well is a good player, but not somebody known for his hard work out of possession. If they go down that route, whether they potentially look to go for more high-energy attackers, like Conway, like Azaz, like Force maybe, those who do offer a bit more in terms of the press, then they will cause us a problem. But if they allow us to play out from the back with the likes of Ian Atcho and Whittaker, then I think we can get up the pitch quite easily. I mean, we've seen how little Morgan Whittaker offers out of possession, haven't we? Let's be honest here. And he's not started well at Borough at all. He's looked really poor, both for Borough and in the first half of the season for Plymouth as well, which, take the money and run from our point of view,
exactly.
In terms of that sell-on clause.
No one's saying that we should have kept him these days, are they? That's for sure.
No. I mean, he probably still would be our best winger.
Absolutely.
But,
without a doubt.
I know what you mean. This week, first time, we're doing a couple of audience questions as well. So people, you've all sent in your questions on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. So we've put a few together of those and we're looking forward to them, really. So first one, Gardner Mitchell on Instagram. Does Ronald become a long-term player or will he be another failed winger that gets replaced in the summer? What do you reckon, Colin?
I think it's a tough question because at the end of the day, he has had 7 GA this season, which is the best of any of our wingers. But he's had a lot of consistent minutes. I think he started 32 out of 35 of the games he's played this season. He almost has seemed undroppable at times. Not undroppable because he's too good, but undroppable just because the manager won't drop him for some reason, play another option. I don't see a long-term future here just because I don't see what he offers. I think we could get a lot better wingers domestically and abroad who would offer a lot more. I think he's had some great games in the Swansea shirt, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not been all doom, but at the same time, that you do have to hunt a lot for the gloom.
And that is what perhaps makes him most frustrating is, the Cardiff home fixture last season against Preston, first home game of the season, and obviously those 2 goals he scored against Sunderland last campaign. There is obviously a player there. Yeah. He is obviously a very talented footballer, but he's very frustrating. What I would say about Ronald is I wouldn't look to move him on. I'd probably look to move on Bianchini and as well before I'd look to move on Ronald, because he works very hard. I think physically he is quite good, even if he falls over way too much. The amount he goes down is just ridiculous and really annoying, frankly. But physically, I think he is quite a good profile. He just needs to learn how to cross for a start.
That's massive.
We mentioned, I don't know if we actually did end up mentioning it, was it 1 out of 5 successful crosses last night?
And none of them were his.
And he
also didn't have a successful dribble last night.
No, and he has almost become less likely to take a man on, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was just a sort of buzz, like he'd just come to a new country, wanted to impress or something, but I remember the Leicester game when he came on and the Blackburn game, he'd just take on any man. He'd just run straight at his man. He tried megs them. He tried to do whatever he could to beat his man. Yeah. Now, I remember it last night. At one point, he just stood on the spot and just did a body feint, and the guy tackled him instantly.
Bit of a fear factor almost that he's scared to take his man on now. But I think, he's been here just over a year now. Was it 4 goals, 7 assists? I don't think it's bad for just over
at the end of the
year.
day, we are aside very short on goals and assists. We can't just be throwing that out the window.
No, I don't either. And as I say, I think Bianchini's offered, especially out wide, very, very little. I think Giannelli is just seemingly broken at this point. Yeah. He obviously came on in the Blackburn game for 15 minutes, wasn't even in the squad last night, and it's like, is there something wrong with him in terms of a condition issue where he cannot play more than once every 2 weeks? If that's the case, then we got a real problem. And I think is too weak, whereas I think Ronald does offer us a bit more. He does work his socks off, which is really important, I think.
Yeah.
Any player works their socks off. I don't think you can ever have too many complaints about. If we were able to bring in someone like, Kwame Poku or whatever, I probably would look to move him on, but I don't think that'll be the case. And I think in terms of a touchline, line-to-line winger, he's quite good.
Yeah.
He's fine for this level.
Yeah, I don't see him as being a major starter in the next few years.
No.
I don't see him really kicking on majorly, but I wouldn't get rid of him over the other options we have right now.
He's no world beater. I think failed winger is harsh. He's just all right in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely not Brazilian. Question from Caden J23 here. Are we going up or down first? What do you think on that?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, I said the summer after Cooper's final at Wembley, the summer Russell Martin joined, I think we probably play League One football before we play Premier League football. Yeah. I mean, all eggs went in the basket of going up under Steve Cooper, and I don't see us being a well-run enough club to go back up and challenge the top end of the division. I think, we are one of the lowest wage bills in the league now. We have some of the least quality in the league. We don't have a manager currently. I think we'd almost have to find lightning in a bottle to go up now, whereas, there's going to be 3 sides that come up in the summer. One of them's going to be Birmingham, who you'd imagine are going to be competing at the top end of the table straight away. We're a lot closer to relegation than promotion than we are now, certainly. Yeah. I don't see that really changing, especially when, there's no signs of the ownership going anywhere. They've just arrived. So, and when there's serious PSR concerns, I can't see us... as I said, I think we'd have to find lightning in the bottle.
I think all signs point firmly in the direction we don't want right now, which is down as well. Because, I think we've been on a steady decline ever since we came down, really. Obviously there was there have been glimpses like points under Russell Martin, a lot of Cooper, obviously a lot of Potter, but ultimately it has been going down and down and down. I just think you can't get away with just about staying up, boring by March, the season's done. Poor recruitment. I just don't think you can get away with these season on season. I think eventually they do catch up on you. Obviously, you're in my heart, I say we could easily change that and go up. At the start of next season, I'll probably be saying we'll be going up.
And part of the problem I have as well is I don't trust us to hold on to a really good player or a really good manager for long enough to sustain a charge. And I don't see us having, sounds stupid, but I think our recruitment's been so poor recently that I don't see us recruiting enough good players at the same time and in a variety of different positions to cause any sort of challenge. And then do you trust us? We might have some really good players, but do you trust us to get the manager right? And I'm not necessarily sure you do. So I think all signs point towards League One football before Premier League. Archie Hubbard on Twitter has asked for our updated top 3 manager candidates. I'm going to go first. Mine are the same as I said here last time. I'd still have Rob Edwards, I'd still have Des Buckingham, and I'd still have David Wagner. But I'm led to believe that you've changed yours a little bit.
I have. I've done a little bit more research. I'm going to be honest, I sort of just went completely out of tune with it after the podcast. Wasn't interested in the manager search at all because in my head, it was just going to be Sheehan until the end of the season. It
sounds like it's only going to be Sheehan until the international break.
Exactly. That's why we kind of need to discuss this. But number 1, I'll go sort of my... not niche because he is a domestic manager, but niche in what he currently does. Ryan Mason is currently my number 1 choice. Obviously, he works with Ange Postecoglou currently. Seemingly has a sort of possession-minded philosophy behind him. And I think, we've seen it in the past with plenty of other teams taking on assistant managers. And of course, you like this idea of bringing in a domestic coach. And, if we were going to go for... not a ridiculously cheap, but he is an assistant manager, so we wouldn't have to break the bank for him. I don't think we could do much better.
I thought you were going to say Dave Chalner then, I'll be honest, when you were talking domestic, but...
No.
No, he seems a bit ambitious, doesn't it? Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Eda Sarabia. Eda Sarabia is currently the manager of Elche. I
feel like you've definitely butchered that pronunciation, but go on.
Eda Sarabia, I feel like.
Sarabia, surely.
Maybe, but regardless, currently the manager of Elche, who are, I think, 5th in La Liga 2, but of course, if you know anything about that league, there's like a 2-point gap between 1st and 8th.
It's a really tight league,
and they were second not too long ago. They've had a bit of a tough spell. But I picked up on him when he was managing Piqué's team, was it?
Andorra,
Andorra. And of course, now he's upgraded job a bit, and he has turned Elche into a much better team. They, from what I've looked at, they seemed pretty lackluster when he first came in, but now they are a side who are dominating the ball, pressing high, look very confident. I mean, I will honestly go out there and say I don't think there's a more Swansea City manager.
No, and his Elche team keep a hell of a lot of the ball.
Oh yeah,
it is a very much, and let's be honest, any fan, I think, there's a sort of the idea of a Spanish coach is quite seductive.
He has got real shades of Roberto Martinez.
Yeah, and with our history, of course, the idea of bringing a Spaniard is going to be quite seductive. I've said, I've already said plenty of times I'd rather us go domestic, but go on. Who's your third one as well?
Now my third one is Jimmy Thelin. I'd kind of forgotten that he was Aberdeen's manager when I'd originally said it. But of course, that's sort of my bold one because of the current situation Aberdeen are in. So the context...
They are dire at the moment, aren't they?
The context for anyone...
Let's be honest here. They are shocking. They haven't...
They have now won 2 games, so that's not a stat anymore.
Okay.
But they hadn't won from, I think it was the 23rd of November until the 11th of February or something along those lines, which is ridiculous. But also, in his, spell in charge, he broke their record for most unbeaten games. So, it really is 2 sides of a coin. Currently, they do look, pretty poor, but they looked phenomenal in that period. Would you
say that's any different to bringing in David Gray, though, in terms of, the obvious comparison of also managers in Scotland?
I think Thelin has a lot more pedigree. Obviously, he was with Elfsborg before. He finished second in the Swedish division. I think he does offer a lot.
What do you make in terms of the fact he's not particularly possession heavy, though? His Aberdeen side don't look to keep the ball that much.
I think he's one of those managers who sort of tries to work with what he had. I feel like he'd have a few more tools,
Because he was heavily linked with the job the last time it was available, wasn't it?
Whether or not that had any substance or not is another thing. But I think, he, again, is my bold choice. He's a bit more out there, I think, in terms of, what his fit would be and stuff. But I do like him as a coach quite a bit.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Go on. What's the next one you've got for me?
My next one is from Anchor Down Depression. What does that even say?
Depression, yeah. I hope you're all right, if whoever that is, but yeah.
What are your goals for next season?
Yeah, so I think in terms of goals for next season for me, I've gone sort of slightly more, minuscule than looking at going, promotion, relegation, because I think our goal should be a little bit more than just staying up. In my eyes, it's consolidation. I mean, it's going to be our first season under a new manager, so we should look to improve. But what I think we should focus on sort of more minor details. So stuff like, we have been on the end of some real drubbins on the road. I think we should be looking to tighten up on the road at points this season, just to make it a little bit more enjoyable going away. I think we should look to try and, put our heart and soul, put everything into trying to get at least one result against one of the top sides in the league, because we've been dire in those games for years. And something like that, just watching us go toe-to-toe with the big boys and getting a result, crucially. Because, we were excellent against Burnley and Leeds, I think, but crucially, we didn't get over the line. Just getting over the line, and I think something like that could really galvanise the squad, make everyone feel we're going in the right direction. Obviously, the aim has to be to beat Cardiff twice again as well, of course, and that would be really key for any new manager coming in. But I think we have to accept that it's going to take time for a new manager to get his ideas across, but our aim should be a few big wins and make ourselves a little bit stronger against the top sides, and probably against the bottom sides, not huff and puff as much as we have.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that completely. I mean, when you're in the Championship, at the end of the day, your aim always has to be to get promoted in your heart.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that is correct. I, don't see a new manager coming in and just ripping up the carpet instantly, sorting everything out. It's going to take time. He's going to have to lay the foundations.
Because, I don't think Pep would get this group of players promoted. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely not. Thomas George on Instagram. He said, I think we've neglected the domestic transfer market and focused our scouting abroad, especially last summer. Which domestic players within the Football League world would you like to see at Swansea?
I am very much an advocate of bringing in domestic players, as I'm sure you can gather. I've talked extensively about how I want a domestic manager. I'd be looking at the domestic market more if it was up to me. I couldn't agree more with, was it Thomas? I couldn't agree more with what Thomas has to say there. I've gone for 3 players who I think, I've gone for one person in every position. So I've gone for a defender, I've gone for a midfielder, and I've gone for a forward as well. So in terms of defenders, I'd like us to bring in Joe Lowe. I think that link was excellent in January. He's Welsh, crucially, and I think having, it's not the end of the world, but having 2 Welsh centre-backs I think would be really, really cool, to be honest. And the FAW, I think, would like him to have him here, playing in a good system, a system that's relatively similar to what seems like Craig Bellany's trying to create on the international stage. I think he's huge, which is crucial because, that he brings real presence. He's goal threat, which is something, let's be honest, we are going to need to replace a little bit with Harry Darling. And he's incredibly assured on the ball. And I think bringing in a defender like Joe Lowe, he's an obvious Swansea defender. He'd be my defensive target. In terms of midfield, he was the number 1 name I had on my list. It was Adam Randall in terms of a replacement for Matt Grimes. If there are any Plymouth fans watching it, there won't be, but you're going down. So, I would like us to bring in Adam Randall when Plymouth are relegated because, he is an obvious follow-on from Grimes. I think, that succession plan is we've always succeeded with a player like Grimes, a player like Leon Britton, and I think our midfielders looked a little bit lost without that. And I think bringing in someone like Randall, who is that sort of metronome, just plays the ball around, sprays the ball, a little bit like what we were trying to do with Jacob Wright. Randall is also a captain, crucially. He's captain of Plymouth. And I think somebody like that would add something to our midfield, which we are missing at the moment.
Yeah, I think ironically he is also as disrespected as Grimes was when he was here, which is quite funny.
I remember seeing I searched his name up when I was writing the thread. I thought I'd search his name up on Twitter to see what Plymouth fans were saying. And there was a complaint about the fact he only passes backward and sideways. And I thought, there we are, there's our guy. And in terms of a forward, I've gone quite ambitious. I've gone with Louis Barry. Now, Louis Barry's out for the rest of the season on loan to Hull. Obviously, he only played a few minutes, didn't pull up any trees in his short period there. But I think this means that he will definitely be available to a loan for Championship clubs next season. And I think in terms of that inside forward coming off the left, I think Louis Barry's a fantastic player. Mm-hmm. But I think by not playing for 6 months and, this question mark that can he do it outside of Stockport? Of course he can. You know, he's an absolutely brilliant footballer, but he's had some really, difficult loans now. And I think we could potentially exploit that. The fact that there is this sort of sentiment of, is he just basically a one-club man? If Stockport come up, I think this is all academic. I think he goes back there again for a third spell. But he would be my number one wide target. And I think a player who'd suit us really well. Because somebody to come in and bring some goals off the left and just cut in onto his right foot as he does, take some shots on from distance and add another goal threat from wide areas rather than just up front. It is ambitious. Do I think we'd be able to sign Louis Barry? No. But I think by not playing through no fault of his own, his stock is going to fall over the next 6 months. I can't see him going back to Hull if he's not played there for 6 months. So he will be available in the summer. And if he went to a bottom half championship club now, who's to say he won't again in the summer, which is what we are, realistically.
Yeah, I think Louis Barry's an excellent selection, to be honest. Obviously, if Stockport come up, he definitely goes there.
Yeah, he's going back there.
That is the most obvious little PR move ever. But he looked fantastic this season.
He's a wonderful,
and
wonderful
I think
player.
I didn't, say anything about Joe Lowe, but I think that has to be the first signing we make in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most obvious. It's a bit like when we tried to sign Key in January before we signed him in the summer.
Yeah,
I mean, that has to be the first signing.
He's a player we have to bring in because as much as, I think we will look abroad a lot again in the summer, but I like us to bring in a domestic centre-back because, and someone who is a real presence like Joe Lowe. I mean, we have seen other clubs make use of bringing in centre-backs from abroad, like I think Maxi, his name, isn't it? The guy for Plymouth. He looks brilliant, but I wouldn't trust us to get it right, and I think somebody who's doing as well as Joe Lowe is currently. I mean, what I've kind of made for us here is a bit of a paradox because it feels like Wickham and Stockport are the two most likely teams to come up from League One. So basically, one of these definitely would never happen.
Two most likely teams come up besides Birmingham.
Oh, yeah, of course, that goes without saying. Take that second spot, I should have said. The final one, I've got to ask this. Xander Finley on Twitter, who has been loving the comment section of these podcasts. How did it feel getting ratioed over a mullet?
Firstly, it was very impressive. I mean, getting 129 likes.
I'll admit I was
on a tweet about. Yeah, I reckon he had about 10 plug chats. I'm not believing it, but
no, he was helped out by me and a couple of others. Don't worry.
But regardless, I mean, yeah, as long as people are enjoying our content, they can say what they want about my hair. I don't mind it too much.
For next time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
week today.
So next time you watch this, there'll be a lovely perm going on in your
Won't
head.
be noodly though. You don't need to worry about that. It's just a nice little bit of volume.
Yeah, and hopefully, maybe, I mean, we said this last time, but hopefully we might well have a manager in by the next time. I think we'll probably next be recording towards the international break, which will be right at the end of the Sheehan reign. So fingers crossed.
I think there's definitely a chance we'll have more concrete names by then.
Yeah,
at a
I think
minimum.
so.
I don't, obviously, I don't think there'll be potentially a manager in post by then. But I think at least we'll know maybe, our top three sort of thing.
Yeah,
along
hopefully.
those
That would
lines.
be nice because it is boring at the moment, isn't it?
Oh, it is, The manager search starts off really fun and then it gets to about week 3 and you realise, I support Swansea City. We're not bringing anyone in.
And it's got very boring very quickly, the manager search, weirdly, this time. Because I'm always excited for it. It's always fun. But
it was quite fun after Duff.
But it was very fun after Duff. But at the moment, it's been quite dull. But hopefully, as you say, next time we're on, hopefully we'll have a name to bring you or a couple of names to talk about who have been more concrete linked. Thank you ever so much for listening. I'll let you sign this off. Go on.
As always, we appreciate you all for watching and we'll see you all in a bit.